Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome back to Christmas in Arkham 2023. Last night in Group 1 of the tournament, Ithaca managed to advance out of the winners group via tiebreakers, after Yig also got summoned by taking one Elder Sign. Cthulhu, however, did not get summoned, only getting to 3 on the summon track, whereas Ithaca managed to get summoned, taking no Elder Signs but 3 curses. So Ithaca will be waiting for us in the winners group on Sunday. Now we need to play 2 more groups to get him a pair of opponents in that group. But to set the scene, first we need to move over to the altar and go through the locations once again. Here's our altar. I'll just go through a quick explanation of what each location does. So we'll also have 2 fate pieces on the board, these Cthulhus. We'll be controlling the dark fate piece. The investigators will be controlling the lighter fate piece. Up at the other worlds, there's also a wild symbol there. We'll use those to prepare spells later, and I'll explain more about how those work. Up at the other worlds, we can sacrifice our cultists to advance on the summoning track, and that's what we need to be able to summon the Ancient Ones and ultimately win the game. Over at the museum with the blue astral symbol, we can take one of the 2 artifacts, and we'll reveal those along with a monster reserve once we get through the locations. Down here at the ceremony, you can activate your Dark Gift and get a gate card that you can use to move to any location. Streets of Arkham works a little bit different in the solo game. In the multiplayer game, it lets you pass out investigators and raid the other lodges. But in the Streets of Arkham, in the solo mode, when you move there, you get to return 2 of the investigators back to the supply. And if you have control, you can sacrifice a cultist to remove 1 more from your lodge. The Gathering lets you gain 3 cultists and then move 1. I'll talk more about what each location does on control effects when we actually have control of a location. Then up at the library, we'll get to draw 3 additional spell cards, and we'll be able to ready one at no addition. We'll be able to ready an additional spell that turn. So let's go through our reserves. First up with the artifact display, our first ancient one will have the Lamp of Alhazred. Discard to roll 3 dice. For each Elder Sign, gain an Elder Sign, then immediately take another turn. And the Necronomicon. When you gain this artifact, become cursed. Exhaust to add a wild for readying a spell, and discard them to move the fate piece to any location. Then for our first monsters we have to choose from, none of our ancient ones touched the monster reserve last night, just because the monsters require you to become cursed as well. First up on the monster reserve, Deep One, with room for 3 tokens. Upon summoning, place a Deep One on 3 different locations. On your turn, you may remove 1 token to choose a location occupied by a Deep One, and destroy 1 cultist or investigator at that location. The Deep Ones count as 1 cultist for purposes of control, but can't be sacrificed. The special won't affect us because we won't be using Dagon in this tournament. And the other monster in the reserve, Hound of Tyndalos. We saw this earlier. This thing, I've got to figure out some way I can use it in the solo mode, but it's got room for 2 tokens. On your turn, you may discard 1 token to place the Hound of Tyndalos on the summon track of any lodge. The cult's summon track can't advance while being occupied by the Hound of Tyndalos. To remove the Hound of Tyndalos, the cult may either choose to become cursed or visit the ceremony and remove the Hound of Tyndalos instead of activating their Ancient One's Dark Gift. The Hound of Tyndalos is then returned to this card. The Hound of Tyndalos is removed from play when it returns to this card and there are no more tokens. Like I said, I need some way to be able to use that in the solo mode, but that's it for setting the scene at the altar. Now let's go meet our first Ancient One. Our first Ancient One actually made it to the winners group last year in Christmas in Arkham before she laid an egg there and managed to not get summoned. We are talking about Atlach-Nacha, the Spider Queen. Her special ability is Weaver of Worlds. Place 2 of your cultists onto any other lodge, 1 from the Abyss and 1 from your lodge. We'll put that on the Investigator supply in the solo mode. When a lodge with your cultist places one of their cultists or an investigator on a location, you may place one of your cultists from their lodge onto that location as well. So, like I said, we'll use the investigator supply as basically the other lodge in the game. So with that, let's move... Actually, we got to look at the cards first. So as you can see, we've got 2 red and a green that we'll use to move. On a red, we'll find Witch's Curse, taking a blue and a yellow. Choose a cult, that cult becomes cursed. That may well be our first movement card. On a red, we'll find Cubes of Power, taking a blue and a green. When you're rolling dice, you may add 2 additional dice to this roll. And on a green, Corruption, taking a blue and a white. Either sacrifice 2 occultists from your lodge or become cursed. Then you may advance 1 on the summon track or destroy 2 cultists or 2 elder signs from your lodge. Is there anywhere that has blue and white right now? No. That's actually a pretty good spell, though, so I don't want to discard that if I can help it. I also don't want to discard Cubes of Power, definitely. So, actually, I'm going to leave those flipped over like so. But let's move it back over to the altar and get into Atlach-Nacha's playthrough. Before we jump into Atlach-Nacha's playthrough, I would like to wish my US viewers a very happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're planning on spending a lot of time with your families and enjoying a good Thanksgiving meal. But now we can jump right into Atlach-Nacha's playthrough. So as I mentioned earlier, I believe the technical term for Witch's Curse in the solo mode is Elhat Garbaggio, or Lahat Garbagia if we're using the feminine version. So we'll discard that on a red to the other worlds to move over to the library, which will place a cultist and an investigator. And I'll use my much less imposing green dice tower to roll for temporary control of the location. It actually fits very nicely right there in the abyss. What we're looking for, though, and I mentioned this last night, I am still planning to swap that smaller dice tower out. I'll probably be going up to my local game store on Black Friday to see what I can do about that. But we are going to get to roll for temporary control. A Cthulhu will give it to us on this die. Which, that's a lesser elder sign, so we don't get control. But we can ready an additional spell this turn using the same column of... I'll keep that a little bit closer. Using the same column of astral symbols. So we'll draw 3 cards from the spell deck. On a green we'll find Mind Switch, taking a red and a blue. Swap one of your cultists from any one location with any other cultist at a different location. We'll use that to swap cultists, similar to what we've done with other things in the solo game. On another green we'll find Call the Wicked Ones, taking a white and 2 yellow. Summon a monster and become cursed, likely to be movement fodder. Then on a red we'll find Alter Fate, taking a yellow and a white. Either reroll up to 3 of your dice once or 1 of your dice up to 3 times. Alright, then we can ready an additional spell there, but we aren't readying anything with a red and a green there. Then I will draw a card. So on a white I'll find Dark Pact, taking a green and a yellow. Become cursed to prevent gaining all elder signs from a single source. That's not that great. The investigator's up next. They'll discard a green card from the deck to move over to the gathering and place a cultist, or place an investigator. I was kind of thinking a little bit about trying to place a cultist, or trying to move there, but alas, they've taken that away from us. So, as much as I don't want to discard this Dark Pact, actually I don't want to discard really any of my other cards, and I could discard 2 red to move, but I like both of those red spells. So I'm actually going to discard a white to the library to move over to the ceremony, which will let me place a cultist and make me place an investigator. I'll grab a die, then we'll bring the dice tower back into shot and roll for temporary control. Where's the lid for the dice cup? Here it is. That will give us temporary control, which could be an option. Especially with the Dark Gift here, where we place 2 of my cultists from any other lodge onto any other lodge, which would be the supply. So I'll place 1 from the lodge and another from the abyss with the investigators, which means when a lodge places their investigators on a location, I can place 1 of my cultists there as well, and I'll get the gate, which I can use this to move to any location, including the other worlds. And then since I rolled for and got temporary control on the location on the ceremony, I can sacrifice 2 of my cultists from there to advance 1 on my summoning track. So Atlach-Nacha is up to 1 at this point. With a white and a yellow, I'm actually going to prepare Alter Fate. So that'll give me a reroll, which will also give me a red symbol for purposes of preparing spells, because I can use spells on my lodge as additional astral symbols. So that symbol's gone. And then we'll draw on a yellow, we'll find artifacts, taking a blue and a red. Draw 1 artifact from the artifact deck. That could be at the museum. We could go to the museum to get that, if I'm willing to discard 2 green, and I'm not completely enthused about that. But what we're dealing with here is the investigators are discarding a white to try to move to the ceremony, except we're already there. So they'll move to the other worlds instead, which will give Atlach-Nacha her first curse. Then they'll place an investigator there, and I will place a cultist there as well. I could use the gate to move anywhere, but I think I'll actually just discard a green there. I'll just discard a green at the ceremony to move over to the gathering, placing for an investigator and a cultist from my lodge. We'll see if we can get temporary control of the gathering. We cannot, which is fine. I'll get 3 cultists back from the abyss, bringing them over to my lodge, and then I can move 1 to any location, which I think will be, we'll move a cultist up to the other worlds. Then with green, white, red, and an extra red to prepare, I don't think... Nope, we're not preparing anything there. So on a blue, I will find Alhazred's Vengeance, taking a red, green, white. Reveal when another cult takes an action that places at least 1 cultist on your lodge. That cult becomes cursed. That's probably movement fodder. The investigators will then discard a red to move up to the library and place another investigator there. I will indeed use Alhazred's Vengeance at the gathering to move up to the museum. I'll place a cultist and an investigator. Do I want temporary control? May discard and replace the display, sacrificing up to 3 cultists. I don't think I care about temporary control there, because I don't have any Elder Signs yet. So I will... do I want to take the Necronomicon and become cursed? That would be my second curse already. I think I will, actually. Being able to having an easier time preparing spells could end up being worth it. But Atlach-Nacha will take her second curse. Then with a blue, 2 red, and a wild, I will... Yeah, I think we're going to... we got to replace the artifact display first. So Atlach-Nacha will replace the Necronomicon with the Wizard's Grimoire. Your minimum hand size is 5. I may try to get my hands on that if I can, but I need to move quickly. With a green, or with a blue and a red, I will actually prepare a Mind Switch. So I'm going to use the blue and the red that are there. I'll discard the red to prepare and immediately cast Mind Switch, so I can swap a cultist from one location I'll swap with an investigator. So I'll swap this investigator to the streets of Arkham and bring this cultist up to the other worlds. Then I have 3 cards, so I just draw 1. On a red, I'll find Command, taking a wild and a green. Move a monster in a location or lodge to any other location or lodge. That requires me to have a monster, so that sounds like it's probably going to be artifact, probably going to be movement fodder. At the library, the investigators will discard a yellow to move down to the library and place an investigator. That would trigger a raid automatically, except I have no cultists on my lodge, so I don't get raided. I will then at the museum, I'll discard the command, because I'm not using monsters, for a red to move over to the library, which will bring the 3 investigators to my lodge. Then I'll place a cultist and an investigator, and I think I might want temporary control just in case of what I draw. So let's see what happens with the temporary control roll. What else do I have prepped? Oh yeah, I've got that Alter Fate, but I'm probably not going to use that here. Oh wait, actually I don't need to roll for temporary control because I already have control outright because I have 3 cultists there to 1 investigator. So never mind, I don't need temporary control. What that will give me, though, is I will be able to ready a spell, an additional spell, and I can sacrifice a cultist from the library to ready 1 spell at no additional cost. So let's see what we find here. On a yellow, I'll find Witch's Curse, taking a green and white. I discarded this earlier for movement. On a blue, I'll find Enthrall. Choose a location that another cult controls. Destroy 2 of their cultists from that location. We'll use that for investigators as well. And on another blue, I'll find Alter Fate, taking a green and a yellow. Okay, so I get to ready an additional spell, which takes the same astral column. I'll exhaust the Necronomicon because I need a wild to prepare cubes of power, which will let me add 2 additional dice to a roll. Then I get to... that was actually kind of dumb. Do I want the cubes of power? Yeah, that's probably fine. Then, using the same column, I'm going to prepare Alter Fate. Another Alter Fate. So I've got a bunch of rerolls coming. I've got a bunch of rerolls here. Then I can't ready a spell at no additional... Then I can't sacrifice a cultist to ready a spell. So I'll just draw on a white, I will find. Enlighten the Faithful, taking blue, white, or blue, green, yellow. At the end of your turn, you may move up to 3 of your cultists from any one location to any other location. That could actually be very useful depending on where I can manage to set that up. The cultist will then discard a green to the Streets of Arkham to move over to the Gathering and place a cultist. Let's see, what do I want to do here? I will actually discard I'll actually use Enthrall on a blue at the library. These should all be gone since I've prepped a couple spells there. To actually move over to the museum, which will place a cultist and an investigator. I do have to roll for temporary control because there's an equal number of investigators and cultists there. Okay, let's put it in the tower. I still don't get temporary control, which is unfortunate, but I do absolutely want the Wizard's Grimoire here. And then replacing that in the artifact display will be Skull of Lore. Exhaust to roll 1 die. On a Cthulhu, discard the Skull of Lore, advance 1 on your summon track. On a Greater Elder Sign, become cursed. I don't care about that. I think all of my spells right now are going to be for when I go up to the other world, which I will be doing pretty soon. So, yeah. Actually, it may be... Do I really need 2 rerolls right here? Probably... Well, I do need the right symbols, though, which I don't have at the museum right now. I may consider having to move down to the streets of Arkham to get the right symbols and start setting up. So I think that's what we're going to do with that. Anyway, on a blue we'll draw. Call the Wicked Ones, taking a green and 2 white. Summon a monster and become cursed. That sounds like movement fodder to me. From the gathering, the investigators will discard a white. Oh, I do have 5 cards in my hand. I did need to check that. The investigators will discard a white from the gathering to move over to the ceremony, placing another cultist there. And I don't think I want to place another cultist there. So I will discard Witch's Curse at the museum to move down to streets of Ark. No, that's a bad idea because that's going to trigger a raid. Actually, I could use an Alter Fate to try to mitigate some of that. So I will move down to the streets of Arkham, which will trigger a raid. That'll be at the end of my turn, though, placing a cultist and an investigator. Do I want temporary control of the location? I could potentially use it because I could try to mitigate the impact of the raid that way. I don't get it, unfortunately. But I will get to remove 2 of the investigators from my lodge for free. And then since I didn't have control, I wouldn't get to sacrifice a cultist to remove another one. But still, rolling 4 dice on a raid instead of 6 seems like a much better plan to me. I am going to have to discard one of my Alter Fates, though, so I can prepare Enlighten the Faithful, because I've got a yellow, a couple of green, and I'll exhaust the Necronomicon to get a wild. So I'll prepare Enlighten the Faithful, which means all of that's gone. And then I'll draw a card. So on a yellow, I'll find Confound, taking a white and 2 green. Move all investigators from one location to an adjacent location, or destroy all cultists in your lodge. Unfortunately, I do get raided with 4 dice, because I've got 4 investigators on my lodge right now. I do have some mitigation available for that, though. So let's see what happens here. Which I think we'll go ahead and use that. Actually, 2 Elder Signs and Investigator stays. I could probably deal with that. So I'll actually just take the roll. I'd rather have the reroll available. So there are 2 Elder Signs going on Atlach-Nacha's summon track. I'd rather have the rerolls available for when I move into the other worlds anyway, which I'm going to be getting ready to do here soon. So at the end of my turn, after the raid's over, I will cast Enlighten the Faithful to move up to 3 of my cultists from any one location to any other location. I will move 3 from the library. We'll do it that way. The investigators at the ceremony will discard a green to move over to the gathering and put another cultist out there. That's a very dangerous location right now. Moving that out of the way, we have 7. We'd be going up to 8 cultists at the other worlds, which I don't think we're completely ready to do yet. So I'm actually going to discard a Call the Wicked Ones on a blue to move up to the museum. I'm taking a bit of a risk here on getting raided. I'm not getting raided yet. I'll place another cultist and an investigator. And then since I have control, I can discard and replace the artifact display. I resolve the location ability first. So I don't like either of these artifacts. I'll draw a new artifact from the top of the deck. So I will find Forgotten Tome. Exhaust. When a cult moves to the library, draw 2 spell cards. I also have the Necronomicon unexhausted. Artifact limit is 3. which I'm actually pretty happy with most of these. I'm going to clear the display, though. And we'll draw some new artifacts. So, new going to the display. The Amulet of Nyarlathotep. You can exhaust this to change one lesser elder sign to a tentacle. Discard to change all of them. And Ceremonial Dagger. Return to the supply up to 5 cult investigators from your lodge, then become cursed. With control of the museum, I could sacrifice up to 3 cultists from the museum to destroy 1 elder sign from any lodge for each investigator sacrificed this way. I am going to need to bite the bullet, though, and move down to the gathering pretty quickly, although that's going to trigger a huge raid. So I'm going to sacrifice 2 cultists to remove these 2 elder signs from my lodge. But this has the potential to be very, very brutal. Let's see, green. So I have blue, 3 red, and a yellow, plus a wild if I need it. I wish I had a second green there. You know what, I could probably... If I can get down to the ceremony next turn, and I may have to bite the bullet and use this gate to move there, I could probably stop the raid that way. But I'm not going to be able to prepare a spell there, so I'll be drawing up to 5. On a blue, I'll find Witch's Curse. Choose a cult. That cult becomes cursed, taking a yellow and a green. And on a green, I'll find Transmogrify, taking a white and a yellow. Change any one-rolled die to any face. If the new face is a tentacle or a Cthulhu, become cursed. The investigators at the gathering will then discard a yellow to move down to the streets of Arkham, placing a cultist, and I will get raided with 4 dice. So we'll bring 3 more into the roll. That's 1 elder sign, but the investigator stays. That's not too catastrophic. So we'll take 1 elder sign back. So now I have a decision to make here. I think here we just bite the bullet and hope we get all 8 summons. Well, we are going to be rolling 10 dice, and we've got rerolls for days, so I think Atlach-Nacha is going to risk it. Actually, before we do that, I need to take a small break. I think here we are going to go for it all. So from the museum, I'll discard the gate card to move up to the other worlds, which will put this is my last investigator from the lodge, so I'm going to be taking an elder sign penalty here next turn, if this doesn't work. I do control the location, though, so that is very important to note. Which means I'll get to sacrifice cultists for the tentacle or Cthulhu I roll. For each Cthulhu or tentacle I roll. And because I have control of the location, Cthulhus bring the investigators back to my lodge. I will also cast... Where is it? I'll also cast Cubes of Power here to give me 2 additional dice to the roll. So I'm rolling all 10 dice. If this doesn't work the way I hope it will, then I want to see a few Cthulhus so I can bring cultists back to the lodge. But since I have exactly 8 cultists there, if I can get 8 summon results, then Atlach-Nacha will get summoned. Having only taken 1 elder sign, hopefully, which will be a great performance. Well, I'm also going to cast Alter Fate to reroll up to 3 of my dice once. So I'm going to roll these 3 elder signs, because I do have 5 summon results in there. But here we almost have to go for it at this point. And we get no help on that. So we'll sacrifice 2 cultists. Actually, we'd technically be sacrificing 5 cultists, but because we have control of the location, we get 3 from the Abyss to the Lodge. So I'm going to shortcut it, taking from the other worlds directly back to my Lodge, which means I'll advance 5 on the summon track all the way over to 6. So that didn't quite work out for Atlach-Nacha the way I hoped it would. But what do I want to do there as far as preparing a spell is concerned? I think we're going to use the... Actually, there's a wild symbol there already, so I'm going to cast Corruption. So I'm going to prepare Corruption using the blue and the wild symbol there. So I can either sacrifice 2 cultists from my Lodge or become cursed. Then I can advance 1 on the summon track or destroy 2 Elder Signs from my Lodge. So all of this is gone. Then I'll draw a card. So Atlach-Nacha will draw on a yellow. Enlighten the Faithful, taking blue, white, red. We saw this earlier and actually used it earlier. The investigators from the streets of Arkham will then discard a yellow, trying to move back to the streets of Arkham, but they can't move there. So then they try to move to the other worlds, but they can't. So it looks like it just stays in the streets of Arkham. So Atlach-Nacha will take her 3rd curse, which is rather unfortunate. But we will trigger a raid immediately, which is fortunately a 1-die raid, so that's not the worst thing that could have happened. Nope. Whoa. Had a die go flying on me. I'll put that in the cup, bring the dice tower right there. There's the lid. Investigator leaves the Lodge. I will take that result all day long. Okay, so that will do it for the cultist's turn. Do I think I need to trigger... Well, the question now is, do I think I need to move the Fate piece off and get shenanigan-y? I think the answer to that question is no. What I will do, though, is I'm going to discard Witch's Curse at the other worlds to move over to the museum, which will place a cultist and an investigator. Then I have control outright of the location, so I can... I'm actually going to take... What is the artifact limit? I thought it was 3, but it might be 4. Let me check, because I do kind of want that Amulet of Nyarlathotep for roll mitigate, for some dice mitigation. If you acquire a 4th artifact, you must discard 1. I'm actually going to take the Amulet of Nyarlathotep. I'll discard the Forgotten Tome, because that's actually not as useful as I thought it would be. And then replacing it will be Crown of Carcosa. You may roll 2 dice when rolling for temporary control, but if you roll 2 greater Elder Signs, you become cursed and destroy the Crown of Carcosa. I'll sacrifice 1 cultist to the Abyss since I have control to destroy the 1 Elder Sign that I took. Then, with wild, red, yellow, blue, I'll actually prepare Enlighten the Faithful. We used this earlier to great effect. Then Atlach-Nacha will draw up to 5 because that's her hand size. On a red, she'll find Sign of the Brotherhood, taking 2 blue and a green. Choose 1 other cultist and return 1 of their cultists from the Abyss and place it on their Lodge. You may return 3 cultists from the Abyss and place them in your Lodge. And on a yellow, Power Surge, taking a wild. Until the end of your turn, you control your current location. And it would help if I actually remember to discard everything there. And I just saw what the investigators are doing at the streets of Arkham. So they'll discard a blue, trying to move to the museum, but they can't because we're there. So I'll move to the other worlds, which will place an investigator. We'll put another... Oh, before we do that, we're going to back up a bit. None of this is going to change, but at the end of the turn, I'm going to remember to actually cast Enlighten the Faithful. So I'll move the 2 investigators, the 2 cultists, to the other worlds. So now the investigators will move to the other worlds because they're trying to move to the museum, but they can't. Atlach-Nacha's taken her, well, it's going to take her 4th curse. We place the investigator there, and then Atlach-Nacha will place a cultist there as well. I believe that was in the Abyss. Okay, so that's actually kind of problematic because I was looking to move to the other worlds this turn, but now we have to do without that. I don't particularly want to trigger a raid right now because if we get raided with a lot of dice, we have the potential to take our 5th curse, and that would just end the game. So I think with that in mind, I'm actually going to use 2 yellow spells at the... I'm going to use 2 yellow symbols at the museum to move down to the museum. I know I'm taking a bit of a risk here. But the problem is, right now, Atlach-Nacha's in a situation where her 5th curse just means she's all but eliminated from the tournament. So I'll place a cultist and an investigator, and I'll get a gate card, and I'll get to trigger my Dark Gift. I don't have enough cultists there to sacrifice, so that doesn't really matter. And unfortunately, I don't have anything from my lodge that I can use corruption for. So I know I'm gambling a little bit here. But I get to place 2 cultists, one from the Abyss and one from the lodge. Oh boy, I'm going to be taking a cultist penalty here. I've got to remember what happens when I have no cultists left to place. I believe it's I'm looking here. Gotta see what happens here, because this is actually going to become very important. If I take an Elder Sign, that's one thing, but if I take a curse, then Atlach-Nacha may be doomed. That's still not telling me cultist and... Okay, no cultist in the lodge. Take 2 of your cultists from the Abyss. Okay, so yeah, I'll be taking an Elder Sign and penalty. Okay, so with that in mind, where were we? Oh yes, I was just moving... Okay, I just finished triggering the Atlach-Nacha's Dark Gift. I don't have enough for temporary control, and I wasn't interested in that anyway, so we'll draw 2 cards. On a green, Atlach-Nacha will find Command, taking a wild and a purple and a white, which we saw earlier. And on another green, Power Surge, taking a wild. Until the end of your turn, you control your current location. The investigators are playing a yellow at the other worlds to move up to the streets of Arkham. This has the potential to be very bad, because we are going to get raided here with 3 dice. If we take 3 Elder Signs, then Atlach-Nacha won't... Actually, if we take any Elder Signs, Atlach-Nacha won't... Actually, we can probably take 1. I'll have to figure out how that will... I think we can take 1. If we hit the 5th curse at the same time we hit the last card on the summon track, I'm going to rule that... I'll probably end up ruling that Atlach-Nacha does get summoned. With 1 Elder Sign, but 5 curses, so that'll be problematic on tiebreakers. But let's see what happens with the raid. 2 Elder Signs, that's a big problem. So that'll be 2 Elder Signs going on to Atlach-Nacha's summon track, but all 3 cultists leave. But all 3 cultists leave the lodge. Oh, this is really bad. So we'd have to... So wherever we move, we'd have to end up... This has the potential to be very, very dangerous. The problem here... Actually, you know what? I'm actually going to discard the Amulet of Nephron Ka. This is not originally what I had in mind with it, But I am going to discard that to change all of those to tentacles, so Atlach-Nacha doesn't take any Elder Signs. That was kind of dumb of me to forget that, but sometimes it's what happens. So now Atlach-Nacha is going to go for the home run. So from the ceremony, she's going to move back to the other worlds. Here, I will have to take an Elder Sign and penalty anyway, because I'll place one on the location, one from the lot, one to the lodge, which will be her Elder Sign. Right, and since we have full control of the location, we'll get to return cultists back to the lodge, but I kind of want them to go to the abyss anyway. So 5, 6, 7 dice. Not that I think it's going to matter, because Atlach-Nacha needs 3 to complete her summon. And like I said, she'll get summoned, but she'll have 5 curses in. She'll have 5 curses for purposes of tiebreakers, which will be a big problem. Let's see, she's actually short somehow, and we don't have any rerolls for that. So Atlach-Nacha will sacrifice 2 cultists into the abyss, and she'll advance 2 on her summon track. So she's actually just short on that. That's very unfortunate for Atlach-Nacha, actually. Then we can prep a spell. With wild, blue, yellow, and green, I think I'll prepare. I still have the Necronomicon, so I'll exhaust that to get another blue to prepare and immediately cast Sign of the Brotherhood. So I'll return 3 cultists from the abyss and place them in the lodge. So we get those back. We get 3 cultists back and return them to the lodge. From the streets of Arkham, the investigators will discard a blue to move over to the museum, placing an investigator there. I think I will then unexhaust everything. And I think here I have to. We probably have to draw a card for Atlach-Nacha, so this should have been Atlach-Nacha's card. She will draw on a blue. Rack taking 2 yellow to destroy an investigator from any location or lodge, which means she would then discard a green from there to move the investigator and the cultist and the fate piece to the library. So as we unexhaust everything, Atlach-Nacha will actually discard the Necronomicon to move her fate piece over to the library, so that I can then use 2 green to move right back to the other worlds, which will place a cultist and an investigator. And since we control the location outright once again, we're still going for it here. We haven't taken our 5th curse yet, but we will on this. Assuming that we get at least 1 summon result here, we will take our 5th curse, which will get us summoned, but it'll be problematic for tiebreakers. That is just enough results, so that would sacrifice 3 cultists, 1 of which goes back to the lodge. Atlach-Nacha will end up summoned, but that will be her 5th curse. So problems on tiebreakers. Atlach-Nacha, come on. Yes, got summoned. 1 Elder Sign, but 5 curses. So now that that's all noted, I'll get everything reset, and we'll get ready for our next Ancient One to join the party. We're all set for our next Ancient One, so let's go ahead and reveal the artifact displays and the monster reserve that he'll be starting with. First up first up in the artifact display, the Necronomicon, which we saw Atlach-Nacha use to great effect earlier, and the Ceremonial Dagger. Discard to return. Actually, we saw this end the game in the artifact display. As for the monster reserve, our next Ancient One starts with the Hunting Horror with 4 tokens. Place the Hunting Horror on this card. On your turn, you may discard 1 token to place the Hunting Horror on any lodge. When investigators or cultists are added to the occupied lodge, roll 1 die for each. On a Cthulhu or tentacle, destroy the investigator or cultist, then return the hunting horror to this card. If the hunting horror returns to this card and there are no more tokens, remove hunting horror from play. And Migo, with 3 tokens and 2 artifact spaces. On your turn, instead of playing an astral symbol, you may discard 1 token to move the fate piece to another location and place a Migo there instead of a cultist. Cultists are considered cultists, or Migo are considered cultists, but count as 2 for purposes of control. Migo can't be sacrificed. After a token is discarded and Migo are placed in the location, if an artifact symbol is revealed, place an artifact from the top of the artifact deck face down in the current location's astral column. The next cult to ready a spell there takes the artifact. Okay, so that's everything set there. Now let's go meet our ancient one. Azathoth is, from the looks of Azathoth's dark gift, he's asking to not get summoned. Hasten Doom is his dark gift. Gain 1 Elder Sign, but whenever Azathoth gains at least 1 Elder Sign during a turn, advance Azathoth's summon track by 1 at the conclusion of that turn. So we ideally want to be destroying Elder Signs if we can. I want to keep an eye out for ways I can do that. His starting spell cards: on a green he'll find Power Surge, taking a wild. Until the end of your turn, you control your current locations. That could be helpful. On another green, Command, taking a purple and a white. Move a monster in a location or lodge to any other location or lodge. And on a white, we'll find Witch's Curse. Choose a cult. That cult becomes cursed. With that, let's move over to the altar and see what Azathoth is getting up to. The Witch's Curse is basically complete garbage as far as a spell, but the white symbol on it is potentially even more hazardous. Still, I don't think I have a choice there. So I'll discard the white at the other worlds to move the fate piece to the ceremony, which will put a cultist and an investigator there, if I can ever get it there. We'll grab the gate for Azathoth, and then he will actually roll for temporary control. Did I remember to put a... Yes, I did remember to leave a die in the tower this time. He does not get temporary control. He will gain an Elder Sign, though, which could potentially be a huge problem in terms of tiebreakers. Because remember, Atlach-Nacha only took 1 on her way to getting summoned. But that will advance Azathoth 1 on his summon track at the end of the turn. So with a white and a red there, Azathoth isn't doing anything there. On a green, he'll draw an Ancient Stirring, taking 3 green. Advance 1 on the summon track. You may sacrifice 1 of your cultists at the current altar location to advance 1 more on your summon track. That may be something we try to prepare if we can help it. The investigators from the streets of Arkham are discarding a green to move over to the gathering and placing a cultist or an investigator there. I actually will go ahead and discard and use the gate card for movement this turn to move up to the museum, placing a cultist and an investigator in the lodge. Let's see if I get temporary control of the location, because here I could probably use it. I don't get it, which is unfortunate. I will, however, snap up the Necronomicon. Even at the cost of a curse, that thing is too powerful to pass up. Then replacing it in the display will be the Crown of Carcosa. I think this and the Ceremonial Dagger were the 2 artifacts at the end of Atlach-Nacha's play-in. With a blue and a white, we're not preparing anything there. So we'll just draw a spell. Azathoth will find Witch's Curse, taking a white and a red on a green. Choose a cult. That cult becomes cursed. From the gathering, the investigators will discard a green to move up to the other world and place a cultist there. We've got a bunch of green, so gee, I wonder where we're moving. The only question is, what are we discarding? We'll actually bin the Witch's Curse to move to the Gathering. We'll place a Cultist and an Investigator. Let's see if we get temporary control of the location. Grabbing the lid. We don't get temporary control. I'll keep the lid on this side. So I'll gain 3 back from the Abyss, including the one that I tipped over. And then we'll move 1 out to the other worlds. With 3 green, I actually will exhaust the Necronomicon for another wild to prepare an Ancient Stirring, and I'll immediately cast it to advance 1 on the summon track, and I'll sacrifice 1 cultist at the current altar location to advance another 1 on the track. So that'll bring Azathoth up. He should be at 3 on the summon track right now. I forgot to advance for the end of his turn. Then on a blue Azathoth we'll find Broken Seal, taking 3 blue. Destroy any 1 Elder Sign. You may sacrifice a cultist at the current altar location to destroy 1 more. Which reminds me, these should all be gone. The investigators at the other worlds will discard a red to move out to the library and place an investigator there. Looking for us. I kind of want to keep that Broken Seal if I can. So I think with that in mind, I'll discard... what do I want to do here? I'll discard 2 green, which loses me a Power Surge, which I don't like, but the command I can live without. So I'll move over to... Well, I'll unexhaust the Necronomicon. I will move to... I'm not quite ready to go to the other worlds yet. I'll actually move over to the Ceremony, which will give me another Elder Sign, but I can't help that. We'll place a Cultist and an Investigator. So I'll roll for temporary control. Which I don't get. That's unfortunate. I will gain a gate, and Azathoth will unfortunately take another Elder Sign. But it will give him another progress on his summon track at the end of the turn. White-red wild is not preparing anything, so Azathoth will draw 2 cards. On a yellow, Azathoth will find Enlighten the Faithful, taking red, white, blue. At the end of your turn, you may move up to 3 of your cultists from any 1 location to any other. That could be useful if we can get somewhere that lets us prepare spells. And on another yellow, we'll find Cubes of Power, taking a red and a white. When you are rolling dice, you may add 2 additional dice to the roll. The investigators at the library will then discard a red, trying to move to another location, but they'll instead move to the other worlds, placing another investigator there. The gate. Where could we go with that? Actually, there are plenty. We could go anywhere we want. I think we'll go to the library, though, mostly so I can try to cycle through this deck a little bit faster, because I see what's on top. Okay, placing a cultist and an investigator. We'll see if we get temporary control. Here, I could use temporary control. Actually, there are a couple of spells here that I wouldn't mind having temporary control for, which we don't get, of course. We'll then draw 3 cards. On a blue Azathoth, we'll find Enlighten the Investigators, taking a red and a white on a blue. Cast when a cult discards a monster token. That cult places 2 investigators in their lodge. On a green, Dark Pact, taking a white and a red. Become cursed to prevent gaining all Elder Signs from a single source. And on a blue, Transmogrify, taking a green and a red. Change any 1 rolled die to any face, but if the new face is a cultist or Tentacle or Cthulhu become cursed. I don't think there's a hand limit on spells. Is there? No hand limit. Okay. Alright, so we can ready an additional spell using the same column with 2 red, a green, and anything. Well, I have anything because of the Necronomicon, which I will actually use that, to use the Necronomicon, to get a white to prepare cubes of power. So when I'm rolling, I can add 2 additional dice to the roll. That'll give me a yellow for purposes of preparing spells, but that's all I can do there. So on a yellow, Azathoth will draw. Rack taking 2 white. The investigators at the other worlds will then discard a blue to move over to the museum and place another cultist. Looking at my turn, those 2 blues aren't that great. The Enlighten the Investigators and the Transmogrify. The only question is, where do I want to move with them? Well, I unexhausted the Necronomicon. Do I want to move to the ceremony to be able to prepare either Broken Seal or Enlighten the Faithful at the risk of a raid? Yeah, actually, I think that's kind of worth the risk. So we'll discard 2 blue. That will give me another... The only thing I don't like about that is that will give me another Elder Sign. But I think it's probably worth the risk, since I'm probably going to try to move to... That would trigger a raid if I move to the museum, but I think the ceremony is worth the risk here. So we'll gain the cultists. We'll place a cultist and an investigator. I do have control, so I've got options there. I get the gate, and then I gain another Elder Sign, which will advance me another one on the summon track this turn. I can also sacrifice 2 of my cultists from the ceremony, which I will do, to advance another one on Azathoth's summon track. So he's at 4 right now. Actually, that's 2 I have to sacrifice, which I've got to sacrifice another one. Then I will... I've got 2 gates there, so I'll actually prepare... I'll actually exhaust the Necronomicon to get another wild. So I'll prepare and immediately cast Broken Seal to destroy any one Elder Sign, and I'll sacrifice a cultist at the current altar location to destroy another one, so I get rid of 2 of these Elder Signs. Which means those are gone, and Azathoth did all that, so he will draw on a white. He'll find artifacts taking a green and yellow. Draw 1 artifact from the artifact deck. I'll get all of these out of the way. This has the potential to be very risky, because the investigators from the museum are discarding a yellow to move to the streets of Arkham, which will put an investigator out and automatically and immediately trigger a raid. I have 3 investigators on Azathoth's lodge right now, so this will be 3 dice. Trying not to drop the lid. Yikes, that's 2 Elder Signs, but 1 investigator stays. That's unfortunate. That's 2 Elder Signs and 1 investigator stays in the lodge. That is more than slightly problematic. So we'll bring that out of shot, leaving 1 of the dice in there. And what does Azathoth want to do? Triggering another raid would be asking for trouble right now. So I don't want to discard the 2 yellow, though. But I could move to the move to the Gathering. That might be worth a risk, actually. So I will discard Dark Pact at the Ceremony to move to the Gathering, which will move the 3 investigators here to my lodge. I don't get raided yet because I only have 4 on the lodge. A raid would automatically trigger if I had 5. Placing a cultist and an investigator. We'll see if I get temporary control. Not that, well, I'm not going to bother with temporary control, actually. Never mind that. So I'll gain 3 back from the Abyss and move the 1 up to the other worlds. I feel like we're going to have to go for another home run here, but we need a way. We're going to need a way to get rid of the cultists, to get rid of these Elder Signs pronto. So, with 3 green, I don't think I'm preparing any. Actually, I take that back. I'll exhaust the Necronomicon to get a wild, so I can prepare, and I'll immediately cast Find Artifact to draw an artifact from the artifact deck. So Azathoth will draw Silver Key. Exhaust to move 1 cultist from any one location to any other location where I have 1 or fewer cultists. Okay, that's not totally garbage, but that also discards to move the Fate Piece to any other location. So if I need to move something off. Alright, and okay, there's Find Artifact. So on a blue Azathoth we'll find Alter Fate, taking a yellow and a green. I can either reroll up to 3 of my dice once or 1 of my dice up to 3 times. That's on a blue, so we may have to bite the bullet and try to... Oh boy, that's going to be a problem. Well, the investigators at the Streets of Arkham are discarding a red to move up to the library. And then what are we doing here? Well, I think we're actually going to discard the... Oh, that's going to mitigate a raid. That could be a big problem. Well, I'm going to have to risk it, even though this is probably a bad place. So we'll move to the Streets of Arkham, which will bring those investigators to the lodge and be triggering a raid at the end of my turn. Here's a spot where I could really use temporary control of the Streets of Arkham. Which I don't get. That's unfortunate. So I'll destroy 2 cultists, 2 investigators from the lodge with yellow, white, green, red, and anything. Actually, we'll exhaust the Necronomicon to get a wild so I can cast Enlighten the Faithful. At the end of my turn, or so I can prepare Enlighten the Faithful. At the end of my turn, I can move 3 of my investigators from any one location to any other location. So those are gone. And then Azathoth will be drawing 2 cards, drawing up to 3. Azathoth will draw on a red. Alhazred's Vengeance, taking blue, yellow, white. Reveal when another cult takes an action that places at least 1 cultist on your lodge. That cult becomes cursed. And on a green, Mind Switch, taking a red and a blue. Swap 1 of your cultists from any one location with any other cult at a different location. Alright, so at the end of my turn, I'll cast Enlighten the Faithful to move the 2 from the library up to the other world. But we are getting raided with 5 dice. This is not great. We'll see if Azathoth can dodge a bullet, but I'm not betting on it here. Bring the lid back over. Yowza. That is 3 Elder Signs and 3 cultists stay, which will actually mean Azathoth will trigger his second curse. So 1, 2, 3. The reason Azathoth is getting his second curse here is because his Elder Sign progress met his current progress on the summon track. Azathoth is in deep water when it comes to trying to get summoned here. Let's see what the Okay, so actually I moved the wrong fate piece. No, I didn't. I haven't moved the investigators yet. So the investigators are discarding a yellow at the library, trying to move to the streets of Arkham, except they move to the other world instead. And Azathoth will take his third curse. He is just all kinds of trouble here. Okay, so that should have lost him 2 investigators, 3 stay. I almost forgot to discard the investigators that I needed to. As for Azathoth's next turn, he is not in a great spot at all here. He's going to be facing another raid. That is a huge problem. I think almost anywhere he goes, he's going to be facing a raid. Well, I think we'll discard a red at the... I think we'll discard the Alhazred's Vengeance on a red at the streets of Arkham. No, that's a stupid idea. Can we get out of this without a raid? Or do we just face the music at this point and realize that Azathoth is going to... Well, green is his only way to avoid a raid. So, actually, yeah, green is his only way to avoid a raid right now. So... I will discard a Mind Switch on a green to move to the Gathering, which will place a Cultist. I do have a Gate card in hand as well, so I do need to keep a very careful eye on that. Rolling for temporary control. Well, I'm not going to bother rolling for temporary control. I'll get 3 Cultists back, and then move 1 to the other worlds. I feel like we're going to have to go for a home run at this point. With 3 green, a yellow, and anything... Actually, we're going to prepare Alter Fate. So that'll give me reroll 3 of my dice once or 1 3 times. And it'll give me a blue for purposes of preparing spells. Azathoth will draw 2 cards. Azathoth will draw on a blue. Rack taking 2 yellow. We've seen this earlier. And on a red, Cubes of Power to give him 2 additional dice, taking a blue and a green. The investigators at the other worlds will then discard a yellow to move to the streets of Arkham, placing another cultist, and we will get raided with 3 dice. Azathoth is very much in a bad way here, though. Let's see if he gets out of this. I'm not betting on it, though. Two Elder Signs and 1 cultist stays. The thing I'm starting to discover here is in a tournament where Elder Signs are such a critical tiebreaker, Azathoth's Dark Gift is actually pretty terrible. So I need to figure out some way to make that Dark Gift a little bit better for him. I'm just not sure where that goes. I'll have to give that a little bit of thought over the next year. I'm also open to suggestions on that in the comments down below. But before we get into Azathoth's next turn, I need to take a small break. Right now, I think it's a do-or-die situation for the Blind Idiot God. He at least wants to get summoned. Well, summoned. So we're going to discard the Gate card to move up to the other world, which will bring the investigators onto his lodge. At this point, I think he's just facing the music. We'll place another cultist there, and an investigator there. I think he at least wants to get summoned before the raid triggers. So with 7 dice, he needs to get at least 5 of them to be summoned. And we'll cast Cubes of Power to give him 2 additional dice. So he'll be rolling 9 dice. Let's see, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's actually exactsies, which means we'd sacrifice 5 cultists. 1 would return to the lodge. Then Azathoth will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He'll advance to get summoned, but he took a lot of damage along the way. So I'm just going to finish this up over here, and then we'll tab back over to Excel. Azathoth did get summoned, but he took 8 Elder Signs, but 3 curses. So Atlach-Nacha is very much on track to repeat her performance in last year's Fate of the Elder Gods tournament, but there's one more Ancient One standing in her way, so I'm going to shut the camera off so I can get everything ready for that last playthrough. One Ancient One left in Group 2, so let's go ahead and set the scene for that last playthrough. First, the artifact display will find the Silk Shroud of Atlach-Nacha. As exhausted to move one investigator being placed on your lodge to any location instead. Discard to return to the supply up to 2 cultists from your lodge. You could use that to stop a raid. And True Magic. Discard a spell in your reserve and draw the top spell from the spell deck and immediately ready it for free. Then in the Monster Reserve, first up we have the Hunting Horror, which we saw earlier, and a Bayaki with 3 tokens. Upon summoning, gain 1 gate card and place the Bayaki on any location. On your turn, you may discard 1 token to move the Bayaki and any 2 cultists at its current location to any other location. Okay, with that, let's go meet our last Ancient One in Group 2. Standing between the Spider Queen and a second straight trip to the winner's group will be the Crawling Chaos Nyarlathotep. As we can see, his dark gift is Masks. Destroy 1 cultist from each other cult's lodge, then place 1 investigator on each other cult's lodge. In a solo game, that's another pretty terrible dark gift. So I think the way we're going to do that, I don't remember what we did last year. What we're going to do this year is I've got a regular D6 over here. So what I'm going to do is when we trigger Nyarlathotep's dark gift, I'm going to roll that die, and whatever result we get, we'll be able to destroy that many cultists or that many investigators from any of the locations on the altar and place a cultist there instead. So we still get the simulated mask effect. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at Nyarlathotep's spells to start with. On a yellow, he'll find Alhazred's Vengeance, which we saw earlier and is not that useful. That might be movement fodder later. On a white, we'll find Rack taking 2 blue, also probably movement fodder, and Sign of the Brotherhood taking 2 green and a red. Choosing another cult to return 1 of their cultists from the Abyss and place it on their lodge. You return 3 of your cultists from the Abyss and place them in your lodge. With that, let's move over to the altar and see how Nyarlathotep's playthrough goes. Since Rack is pretty much garbage, I'm going to discard the white to move over to the ceremony right off the bat, which will place a cultist and an investigator there. Then we'll roll for temporary control. I'm actually going to roll for both temporary control and Nyarlathotep's dark gift at the same time. So we'll get Nyarlathotep as gate card. We're not preparing any spells with white and red there alone. Oh boy, we don't get temporary control, but we do get to destroy 6 investigators and replace them with cultists. And those cultists will come from the lodge. So, I think 1 will be to take out this investigator. That'll go down to 5. I'll use that to keep track of how many I've done and replace it with an investigator. 4. 3, 2. I won't be able to trigger his. Oh boy, this could actually be a problem. To especially roll that this early, and I will destroy that investigator. We need to get him over to the gathering pronto. Fortunately, we've got a gate card that we could use for that purpose. I'm not giving him control of the location because we determined that earlier. Actually, do we check once for control? I think. Perform the control action. Actually, no, I take that back. Looks like it just. Looks like you check for temporary control, No, it looks like anytime you have control, you can just perform the control action. So that means Nyarlathotep will immediately sacrifice 2 cultists to move 1 on the summoning track. That seems really powerful, actually. We're not preparing anything with a green and with a red and a white, so on a white, Nyarlathotep will find Witch's Curse, taking a red and a blue. The investigators at the streets of Arkham will discard a red card to move to the library and place a cult there, or place an investigator there. Well, given our current situation, I'm actually a bit warm. Given that we need to get cultists back to the lodge, I think we're going to use the gate card at the ceremony to move over to the gathering, which will place our last cultist and an investigator. But since we have control, we get to resolve the control action, which will give us 3 cultists back, and we can move these 3. We'll move them straight to the other worlds. Then with 2 green, Nyarlathotep isn't preparing anything, so on a white he'll find Coerce the Innocent, taking a green, blue, yellow. Move up to 2 investigators from any 1 location or lodge to any lodge. Alright, the investigators from the library will then discard a yellow to move down to the streets of Arkham, putting down another investigator, and that would trigger a raid, but Nyarlathotep currently has no cultists on his lodge. So, I think with that in mind, Nyarlathotep will discard 2 white at the gathering to move up to the other worlds, which will place a cultist and an investigator, and he very much controls the other worlds outright, so he'll get 6 dice at trying to summon, or trying to make progress on his summoning track. Let's see what he does here. So we'll get to sacrifice 2 cultists, one of which will return to the lodge, and he'll advance 2 more on his summoning track. Then with red, white, wild card, he's not preparing anything there. So on a green, Nyarlathotep will find Sign of the Brotherhood, taking 2 yellow and a red and a white this time. The investigators at the streets of Arkham will discard a blue to move over to the museum and place a cultist, or an investigator there. As for Nyarlathotep, we will... Do I want to risk the... I don't think I want to risk the... I don't think I want to risk his Dark Gift again yet, so I'm going to discard a green. I don't think any of the spells there are... Nope, none of the spells there are useful, so I'll discard a green to move back to the gathering, which will place a cultist and an investigator. I won't bother rolling for temporary control. I'll just take the 3 cultists from the abyss and move the other one up to the gathering. Then I'm not preparing anything with 2 green and 2 white. On a red, Nyarlathotep will find Command, taking a purple and a green. Move a monster in a location or lodge to any other location or lodge. Not particularly useful, but that's probably movement fodder. From the museum, the investigators will discard a green, trying to move to the gathering, but they can't get there. So that will be Nyarlathotep's first curse. They go up to the other worlds and place an investigator there. I will then discard for Nyarlathotep a red on a command to move up to the library, which will place an investigator and a cultist, but it will also give us control of the library, so we can actually sacrifice a cultist to ready a spell at no cost. Plus we can ready an additional spell. Let's see what we draw here. So on a red, Nyarlathotep will find Rack, taking 2 green. On a green, Coerce the Innocent, taking white, yellow, red. Move up to 2 investigators. I think we have another copy of this that we discarded. And on a green, we'll find Alter Fate. Either reroll up to 3 of your dice once or 1 3 times. which I think will ready that, using the symbols there. Then we'll sacrifice a cultist to ready a sign of the Brotherhood at no cost. This is technically all at the end of the turn. And then Nyarlathotep will draw on a green he'll find. Dark Pact, taking a white and a red. Become cursed to prevent gaining all Elder Signs from a single source. The investigators from the other worlds will discard a blue to move over to the museum and place an investigator there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, we need 6, and we'd have exactly 6 if we go to the other worlds, which we can do. Question is it worth it at this point? And the answer to that is probably... it is a bit of a risk if we want to go there now, because we'd have to get all 6 summons. Although we do have some dice mitigation on that, so I think he will reckon it worth the risk. So we'll discard 2 green to move up to the other worlds, which will place the 6th cultist and a 3rd investigator. It won't trigger a raid, but we will have 6 dice to roll at this summon attempt. If all of these are summons, then Nyarlathotep will actually advance with no Elder Signs but 1 curse into the winners group. Let's see what happens here. That's 2 summons. I don't think Alter Fate's worthwhile. So we'll sacrifice 2 cultists, one of which will go back to the lodge, and Nyarlathotep will advance 2 more on the summon track. We've got red, white, green, blue, and wild, which I won't prepare anything with. But Nyarlathotep will draw on a white he'll find. Shadow Walk, taking 2 yellow and a blue. At the end of your turn, you may sacrifice 1 cultist from your lodge and become cursed to immediately take another turn. The investigators will discard a blue at the library, or at the museum, trying to move to the library again, but they can't. So they move to the other world. That'll give Nyarlathotep his 2nd curse. And then they'll move to the streets of Arkham, which will place another investigator. It would trigger a raid, but Nyarlathotep once again has no cultists on his lodge. Let's see. We got some options here, truth be told. I will discard a... Shadow Walk's actually pretty good, and he's only got 2 curses right now. I'll just discard a red to try to get some more movement options to move over to the library, which will place a cultist and an investigator. Let's roll for temporary control. We'll get these dice out of shot, out of the tower. He will not get temporary control, but he will get to draw 3 spells and he can ready an additional 1. So 3 spells from the top. On a blue, Nyarlathotep will find Broken Seal, taking 3 blue. Destroy any 1 Elder Sign. You may sacrifice 1 cultist at the current altar location to destroy 1 more. On a red, Enlighten the Faithful, taking blue, white, yellow. We saw this earlier. At the end of your turn, you may move up to 3 of your cultists from any 1 location to any other. And on a white, Dark Pact, taking green and yellow. Become cursed to prevent gaining all Elder Signs from a single source. I don't think we have anything we can prepare, though, that's going to be useful. No. So Nyarlathotep will just draw another spell. On a yellow, he'll find Power Surge, taking wild. Until the end of your turn, you control your current location. The investigators from the streets of Arkham will discard a white to move over to the ceremony, placing an investigator. Do we risk moving up to the other worlds again? Actually, no. I think we will discard Broken Seal at the library to move over to the museum, which will bring these 3 cultists over to the lodge. Placing a cultist and an investigator. We'll roll for temporary control. Once I get the dice tower into shot. Which we don't get temporary control. I will draw an artifact from the top, so Nyarlathotep will draw the Lamp of Alhazred. Roll 3 dice when you discard it. For each elder sign or greater elder sign, gain an elder sign. Then immediately take another turn. That could be worth it if Nyarlathotep just wants to turn the lights out, try to turn the lights out here. So we've done that. With 2 blue, green, white, I think we will not prepare anything. So, actually, what does that takes green and yellow? Never mind. So on a blue, Nyarlathotep will find Sign of the Brotherhood, this time taking 2 red and a blue. I think actually Nyarlathotep will try to turn the lights out using the Lamp of... actually, does he need to use the Lamp of Alhazred? I don't think so. I think we'll just sit on that. That seems like an unnecessary risk right now, and the Crawling Chaos has never struck me as an ancient one that likes to take unnecessary risks. Anyway, from the ceremony, they will discard a green to move over to the gathering and place a cultist. Looking at Nyarlathotep's hand, his 2 yellow are both pretty suspect, so we'll use those to move up to the other worlds. This is more of a calculated risk from Nyarlathotep. So he's basically gambling that he'll be able to get summoned here before the raid goes off. He'll be rolling 5 dice, and he's got mitigation. He needs 4 of them to be summons, though. So that's a little bit of a gamble on his part, but he's got some mitigation for that. So let's see what happens here. If Nyarlathotep gets summoned here, he will advance to the winner's group on Sunday. That looks like exactly 4 to me. So he will sacrifice 4 cultists, one of which would technically advance if I'm doing this one of which would technically return to the lodge by the book. 1, 2, 3, 4. So Nyarlathotep has managed to get summoned. I'll wait for something on my iPad to finish up off camera. Okay. Then Nyarlathotep did get summoned, taking no elder signs and 2 curses. That new dark gift from Nyarlathotep was almost too powerful. I'm going to make a note of it, though. So I know what I'm doing for the winners group. But we've got 2/3 of this year's winners group all set up. So that will do it for Group 2 of the Fate of the Elder Gods tournament in Christmas in Arkham. I still have one more play-in group that we have to do. We still have Hastur, Shub-Niggurath, and Azathoth that are waiting for their play-in games. I also want to do the other semifinal bout in the Greatest Boxer tournament in Title Bout 2 this weekend. And then Saturday, Mystical Munchies will finish out of the Heroes Feast official Dungeons & Dragons cookbook with the dessert as we make Trolltide candied apples. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.